Don in London. Hello, it's February the 27th, almost the end of the month. My video's all about, February 27th, 2013, just so you know it's today. So if you see it tomorrow, it's yesterday. But I try and do these daily. My video's all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My addictive substance, alcohol. So I'm an alcoholic in recovery. My name is Don and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm in recovery one day at a time. And it's been made possible because I suppose I had a moment of enlightenment. I don't know what you would call it exactly. The moment of enlightenment was I could not beat addiction on my own, and I didn't see how life could get any worse without being dead. So that's where I got to, and I've been revived more than once over the years for seizures and all the stuff that goes with not being able to cope, not being able to make life work anymore, and stuck in a malady, a killer malady, which I couldn't get out of. And I kept on saying to myself, I must prove that I'm still the person I used to be, and do it on my own. So I was a very defiant and stubborn individual. And had it not been for that moment of enlightenment, or whatever it was, which was, I woke up, there was the vodka under the pillow next to me, no longer a girl there anymore, just a bottle. And I opened the curtains, got up, opened the curtains, and thought, this is as bad as it gets. So there's two ways from here. One is continue and die, or do what I'm supposed to do, which is ask for help, which I eventually did. And, it was no big revelation to anybody else that I needed to ask for help. It just seemed obvious that I was stubborn and defiant, and thought, if I can't beat it on my own, and no matter what I did, I couldn't stop drinking, that is. And then asking for help, got professional help to dry me out, and then they suggested I go to a fellowship called AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, the very last place on the planet I ever thought about going. In fact, I didn't know about it for a long, long time. Honestly, did not know for many a year anything about AA, and why should I? I was a drinker, and I was enjoying it, so I thought. I thought I was living reality, but actually everything was suppressed inside me, because I didn't know how to cope with my feelings and what was going on in the end. So this fellowship, AA, Last Chance Saloon, with no drink, and a bunch of people who seemed very mad, I went to it, and I'm going to talk about it today. What is fellowship to me? So in this little book of AA, which is freely available from all good AA meetings, or not, as the case may be, but you can find the contents online as well. If you just put in official AA site, you'll probably find enough information about why not try AA, but I share about how it helps me. Now, if you're already in the fellowship of AA, because you go to meetings, you know I do not speak for you. Never can, never will. So please don't think, anyone, whether you're a newcomer or an old-timer, that I'm here to speak for you. I'm not. I'm here to share how it works for me, because I was asked. Because some people can't get to meetings, some people can get online, and some people have a lot of misunderstandings about what AA can and cannot do. It can help you, but it cannot fix you. So that's number one. It can help you. And this is the reason why. This is the AA preamble as shared in every meeting or group I go to around here in London, UK. And London, UK has 600 or 700 meetings on the go each week. Plus all the other anonymous fellowships as well, for other substances or behaviour. So this is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have to say I had all the other bits I could have added on as well and gone to different sorts of fellowships. But for me, AA is my principal fellowship, and actually is the only one I go to unless I can't find an AA meeting. I'll go to another meeting of a fellowship, because the principles are the same, and this is why. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other. so that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. So the only reason for going to AA is there, to solve our common problem, which is drinking and not being able to stop and recover and be in recovery one day at a time. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. I didn't even get that. Stubborn and defiant to the end me, didn't want to be there, didn't want to stop drinking because it took the pain away, but then it gave me more pain than I could cope with. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. But everybody inside is, from my experience. We are there because our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So that's a thinking person's explanation. So if you think it's a good idea to stop drinking, even though you don't feel like it, I don't feel like, you see, this is it. If you're a drinker, I don't feel like stopping, I can cope, I can deal with it. The thinking is what sticks us back in the problem most often, because we're not dealing with our feelings, and this is what I've been writing about today. So, February 27, 2013, you'll find online also all the AA daily reflections and other people's reflections, and these are just some to add in. So please don't listen to one voice, not just me. You need as many voices as it takes to find out who you can be without drink on a daily basis. So what is fellowship to me? And this is all about being restored to sanity as well. I never wanted to join anything in my life. I like to be on the outside, and I like to be included just enough to understand why I didn't want to join in. Our fellowship of I'll put this in this way, our fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, because it belongs to everyone. Our fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is not an organisation, and it's not an institution. And certainly for many a year, it was the last place I would ever go. And when I learned that I could not quit drink on my own, I was surprised to find that the fellowship of AA is always what you see today. So the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is as good as it gets when what you see today. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's awful, good, bad and ugly. What you see is what you get. Today is always a mixture of good, bad and ugly experiences shared as truth comes out. Truth comes out today. I was lucky, and I realised I'd finally found a place of sanctuary. That's a sanctuary where I could find out the truth of me, and I only find out the truth of me on a daily basis. So truth is always changing. There are probably absolute truths out there which people believe. I've learned that truth keeps on developing moment by moment, the truth and the wisdom of now. So I found I could join a fellowship which had no rules or regulations and no laws to violate, and was based on one principle. This is where I started to understand there was something else going on. So this desire to stop drinking, all well and good. But what was this one principle that seemed to elude me all my life? Well, it was love. Songs about love, poems about love, people falling in love. I thought I did, and I did actually, but the love I had was it was conditional love. So was it love? I don't know. It was the best I could be at the time. Anyway, no rules, no laws, no regulations to violate, and it was based on one principle, which was love. Emotional and spiritual love is the absolute foundation of living, and I found people in the fellowship of AA who were all about love, even if it was prickly. How people express love, how people help each other, and how it works with raw people is profound. Because don't forget, we all come from a starting place of absolute devastation when we start with AA. So raw people, very raw people is profound. In the Last Chance Saloon, love seems to be the only currency which works one day at a time. And even then it can be a bit roughshod, the love, because of the way people behave. On arrival, the initiation process into the fellowship was a complete letdown based on my old ideas. I turned up and nobody bothered me. That was because I didn't speak. I went to another meeting and had to say my name, or so I thought, and I said, "My name is Don and I'm an alcoholic." And I didn't regret saying it, but I was nervous and thought everybody was looking at me. And everyone in the meeting said, "Hello, Don." I also said I'd been to one or two meetings and still had no clue what it was all about. And people shook my hand and said, "Don't worry, it will be all right, just keep coming back." So, that's the very last thing I wanted to do. And in my early days, I used to go to a meeting, so I did keep coming back, but on the way home I used to get a bottle of vodka, because I really couldn't see what they were talking about, this thing called love. And it all came out in a great big spillage. And it seemed to be entwined with everybody else's idea of what love was. So there was no fanfare, no one gave me the rule book. They gave me a pamphlet of where to find meetings. They gave me tea and biscuits, and I was so desperate sitting there and looking at two scrolls on the wall, one entitled The 12 Steps and the other entitled The 12 Traditions, above the head of the person speaking at the beginning of these meetings. So there they were, 12 steps and 12 traditions on the wall, 24 things going on. The other thing was, I didn't have to pay any money, which was good because I didn't have any. And people were freely expressing their opinions, sharing about their beliefs, sharing about politics, and sharing about the truth that was troubling them today. And everybody seemed to have their own opinion about everything, especially the truth of now. It was all very confusing. The truth the people spoke, well, some of it seemed to be lies. I thought, what an odd place where people share their experience, strength and hope, and nobody seems to care what people say. You don't even know if they're listening. At last, a place where I could spill the beans of me, listen to funny stories, listen to the tragedy and the horror others were feeling, and my horror was no worse than theirs. If you'd been in my shoes, you'd understand why I'm an alcoholic. Well, everybody did. Yeah, fellowship, a strange thing, isn't it? Being in fellowship, a society of people who were just rubbing along and getting on with life. And the only thing in common, which they kept on saying, was that all I needed was a desire to stop drinking and keep coming back. Well, I heard that in the AA preamble. I heard it so many times in the AA preamble, I didn't even hear it anymore. So when somebody said a desire to stop drinking, by that stage I pretty much had one. And in the end I did stop drinking, and it was horrible. So nobody was trying to convert me into anything, and although there were a lot of religious people about, and there still are, and they talked about God freely, and they still do, nobody was asking me to believe in anything, least of all God. And they kept sharing about a higher power, which some said was God, but many didn't believe in God, and they said the higher power came in the form of experience, strength and hope shared by everyone. And by listening to everyone, we could piece together the jigsaw of how sober works for different people, and we will be bonded by this similarity of addiction to alcohol, and all that entails. Well, the bond seems to be, the common thing seems to be a desire to stop drinking eventually, but of course it comes back again. We feel well and we want to do it some more, but the answer is, if we do it some more, there's going to be problems again. So, and there were lots of fancy words and psychology words which I had known from my previous life in business and commerce and helping people. All these fancy words being bandied about, and I thought how misguided and how difficult it could be to judge the people who seemed as confused as me about what these words meant. So I suddenly realised that how we understand the truth is different, very diverse, but we all have this similarity. So, and then somebody said, "Judge not lest ye be judged," and I was not too keen on the biblical reference, And at the same time, it seemed right to say it. Excuse me, judge not lest you be judged. And then, listen to the similarities, said the secretary, and you will hear all the differences as well. And then he joked, a lot of people seem to offload all their beliefs and opinions in meetings, which in their opinion was quite right, because inside all of that stuff, the person speaking and sharing was sober just for today. And then he said, well, as sober as you can be today in our emotional and spiritual fellowship. So sober, if you want to actually measure your sobriety, it's not so much in days, it's how you're feeling right now, emotionally and spiritually. So if you're in the moment of now and you feel shit, say it, I feel shit in the moment of now. And then feelings, that's your mood, impact on how you think. So feel shit, think shit, act shit. Feel good, think good, maybe act good. It doesn't always follow, because there's another tormenting thing in there. It's called free will, and that's good. It's good. That's why we have an existence at all, really. Freedom of choice, free will. Very often and very confusing to the newcomer is the basis of fellowship. A fellowship founded in love, although not many people speak about it that way, all about emotional and spiritual well-being for people who need and have a desire to be sober one day at a time. And not many people like talking emotional and spiritual, do they? Because it might involve God. Well, of course it doesn't. God is a belief that either you have or you don't have. But the higher power bit around, sharing the wisdom of experience, strength and hope is the higher power daily. We listen to the news, we listen to friends, we listen to our loved ones, we listen to family, and of course then we interpret it. So the truth that we see is often quite different from what other people see. But in fellowship, a sanctuary to express yourself. So, emotional and spiritual well-being for people who need and have a desire to be sober one day at a time. And those who are confused by this are those looking for an organisation. If you're confused, why aren't there any rules, laws or regulations? Some people say there ought to be rules, laws and regulations in AA. But the problem is, if you make rules, laws and regulations, being stubborn, defiant people will tell we wouldn't join that, would we? Unless we were making the rules, laws and regulations. And of course people do try to do that in fellowship. So they'll say, it ought to be like this. And the answer is, it's quite good that it hasn't got rules, laws and regulations. And there is something which helps us around that. So if you're looking for an organisation which might fix you and get you back on track, this is not fellowship. Because we don't fix people. We all get to have a desire to be sober, and we learn how to be sober one day at a time. And we have a sanctuary to express ourselves. So the problem is, which might fix them and get them back on track, so they can be the person they used to be. Well, and the answer is, with addiction, there is no going back to a place of freedom and drinking. Well, you can go back to drinking, you have that freedom. When drinking requires, though, control, and we have to control the amount we drink, we will never have that freedom to drink like it used to be before we crossed that line. Because either it was joyful and convivial, or we got smashed because it meant we opened the doors to all sorts of things, including what we thought were loving relationships. And they probably were, but they were doomed because of the drink. And then, amazingly, this is it, we will never have the freedom to drink like it used to be before we cross that line. Crossing the line means life is better, I want to take the edge off, I want to feel right, and the only way I can do it is with a drink. That's the line crossed. And now I know the first drink in all my life did that, because it took the pain away, the fear away. And so I was hooked on managing my feelings with drink. But of course, feelings are quite unmanageable. You never have power over feelings. You can suppress them, yes, but they're still there. And this is the thing I didn't understand. And then amazingly, yes, I realised that the fellowship of AA, once I started going to meetings and stopped drinking, I realised I was part of AA by just being there, and I didn't have to do anything else or prove anything to anyone else. So what I recognised is the fellowship of AA is as good as it gets today. And although you might feel there is something behind the scenes, there isn't anything behind the scenes. There's no secrecy behind the scenes, no leaders you can complain at, because there are no leaders as such. People take on trusted roles within the fellowship, but they're only for a limited time, and there's only one or two of an extended period. And that's because wisdom helps in those situations. You have the right and freedom to be yourself inside meetings. So, and certainly there are no rules, laws or regulations about what you can or cannot do. You'll find people telling you can't do that. You say, yes you can, because I'm doing it. You can't sit there. Yes I can. But if you're disruptive, just for the sake of being disruptive, which some of us are to start with, we need to calm down a bit and realise it's about freedom in your life. This is all it's all about. So the fellowship of AA is as good as it gets today. So if you encounter a bad meeting of AA, I suggest you go to a different one. And it might be bad because you think they're nutters. And they might be on that day because they're mad as hell about something. Usually having an argument about what they can and cannot do. So it's the fellowship enshrines and makes it possible to be argumentative with each other. And please don't hit each other. So there's no secrecy behind the scenes, no leaders you can complain at. And certainly there are no rules, laws or regulations about what you can or cannot do. You have the right and the freedom to be yourself inside meetings, in the sanctuary of anonymity. Sanctuary of anonymity, most of the time, just for today. But of course you find that there are unpleasant people who try and infiltrate. And if you have the misfortune to be famous and worthy of gossip, you're probably going to have a problem, which is not of the fellowship's making, it's of the making of people who may be attending meetings who gossip, or people who just come along and want to listen to. So, choose your meetings carefully, or get to a closed meeting. They do exist for those who find it difficult to share and find it difficult to keep their anonymity, because the newspapers and the media, and also the thing of press, radio and film as well. You don't want somebody out in the public eye recommending AA to you, do you? No, which is why I share about how it helps me and what I experienced there, which is sanctuary to find out the truth of who I am. And truthfully, the truth of who I am is no different to anybody else particularly. I've had my ups and downs, my good parts and my bad parts and ugly parts. And it's human doings. It's just being a human. And we all fuck up as much as we are successful. Anyway, I'm going to talk about that too. And I'll try and explain why I'm a bit up and down at the moment. Anyway, just for today, you get sanctuary. And if you are lucky and find through experience the wisdom to be yourself, this is it, the wisdom to be yourself anywhere, the freedom to be yourself as best you can be under any circumstances. Surely that is the best freedom for anyone on the planet today, to be yourself. And we only find out who we are incrementally, day by day. And with that freedom comes life, which is good, bad and ugly, because that's how life is. And always we find a little bit more truth developing and growing in the moment of now. Now, I had no clue about freedom, because it seemed to me I had to make choices based on necessity, economy, and I had no clue about how to love and be loved back at the end of my drinking, so I was at rock bottom. And the journey in recovery is remarkable. We make huge mistakes on the way to rock bottom, where we get to with our drinking, and we make huge mistakes on the way out of rock bottom too. That's life. It is life. The biggest freedom, free of addiction, one day at a time, to open the doors to any kind of life that may be open to us today. We have to work hard. That's life. So there is no quick fix in recovery. It's about living life. And life is difficult, as M. Scott Peck said. But he also said, if you accept that life is difficult, it ceases to be difficult. We just have to work hard. And that applies to anybody, whether you're rich or poor. So, and we do work hard, emotional and spiritual. This is it. The fellowship offers a way to find out what feelings are in the moment of now. Based on my feelings, I can then think clearly about how my feelings impact on my thinking. I always thought that intellect and thinking put me in control. It might seem that it did, but it did not in my case. So knowing my mood and feelings, that they come first, and they're always there, even if I suppress them with my thinking. Mood and feelings, they come first and shape my thinking and shape my actions. It was a bit of a revelation to me. Before recovery, I'd suppressed all my feelings and sought oblivion, because I just hated life. So I'd suppressed all my feelings and sought oblivion. Into recovery, I now realise emotional and spiritual lead to clear thinking and actions as best as it can be today. I can still be mad as hell. Something happened yesterday. Some of my groceries didn't appear, and I signed for them. And yet the supermarket says they're going to deliver them this morning. I have serious doubts about this. Why should I trust them? And why should they trust me? Even though I've signed for them and say I haven't got them, why on earth would they go to the trouble of delivering them? I don't know if they will. I feel a bit worried about this, but they say they're going to do it. I'll let you know tomorrow. So I can be a skeptic. And why would they believe me? You know, I'm only a customer. So what is fellowship? It's all about all that crap I just talked about. So what is fellowship? A place to learn about love. How to love, how it is to be loved back, which I always find difficult. And how it is to find our useful endeavours, which means, and when I say useful endeavours, it's what you choose to do. It's not what you're asked to do. Ask of yourself to be sober, so you can make free choices based on reality. One day at a time. There are 12 steps to help me to be open, honest and willing, to find my higher power enshrined in truth, love and wisdom being learned in the moment of now. So my higher power is truth, love and wisdom being learned as I go along. And, you know, people like Gandhi, different religion, different cult, well, culture. I don't think it was a cult, but, you know, he was, when he said God is truth, God is love, and it's the wisdom being learned as we go along from each other, I go with that. And there are 12 traditions which hold us together in unity, service and recovery. Humility to keep on learning, humility to keep on changing, and the humility to be able to speak the truth as we find it day by day. Which also means that sometimes that what we thought was the truth was not the truth, because we find out a different way of looking at it. So, in unity, service and recovery, keep on learning day by day. The group conscience, which is the mechanism for making decisions, where everybody who's interested in how meetings are formed and how things develop, is done through the group conscience, where everybody hopefully gets together and makes some decisions. Let's keep that bit because it's good. Let's ask about that bit because it doesn't seem to fit anymore. So the group conscience is where those of a religious understanding say the group conscience is where God speaks through people. So, and for me, truth, love and wisdom is God. So I'm not trying to undermine anybody else's belief. Don't forget, 7 billion people on the planet, we all have a way of looking at God. No God. Maybe. Sometimes we believe, sometimes we don't. If we win the lottery, God was on our side. Actually, if we won the lottery, it probably means that we have more trouble than it's worth. I always come to the almost come to the conclusion, although I have done the lottery yesterday, if I'd actually won a large amount of money, it would be a pain in the neck. I haven't won it because I've had no telephone call. I'm sure they would get in touch very quickly. Oh dear. Oh well, there you go. So, you know, this is it. The group conscience works to define and understand the scope of how meetings work in practice. And the more people engage in the traditions and the group conscience, the more able we are to define how we work together in fellowship. How we work together in fellowship. This is not about the rest of your life or being instructed to do anything. It's being loosely able to understand the guidelines and why they are there. But you don't have to accept the guidelines. You know, you're still a free agent, free person, and if there's something you cannot sign up for, you don't sign up for it. But that shouldn't stop your ability to learn how to love, be loved back, understanding, and keep anonymity and anonymous a sanctuary to find the truth of now. So, this is how it seems to work for me. Fellowship is not about agreeing to everything, and it's not about accepting other people's beliefs and opinions. It's about being able to work together despite and because of our differences, and accept that people are different and diverse. The fellowship of AA is always, yes, wait a minute, not about agreeing, and it's not about accepting other people's beliefs and opinions, and it is about working together despite and because of our differences, and it's learning respect and integrity as well. So people are allowed to have different opinions, beliefs and outlooks. It's absolutely right that they do, because if they don't own, or if you try and knock them down and judge them, you will alienate yourself and them. There's no point, because we have one primary purpose in fellowship, and that's to be sober if we can, just for a day. The fellowship of AA is always moving forward as each day unfolds, and as new people find their way into sobriety. We are all fractious people, and we are argumentative, and we might shout at each other from time to time. We all have diverse opinions and beliefs, and we all have affiliations which might be disagreeable to others. We are rich or poor, or somewhere in the middle. We belong to different sects, read different newspapers, see the world differently, and share about it incessantly all day long. And yet we are together. We learn how to love each other, even when we hate each other's behaviour. And we rally around a desire to be sober one day at a time. That's how I feel about fellowship. A very agreeable and disagreeable place to be, all about sober and sharing the shit, the good, or the good, bad and ugly, as you care to look at it. And how am I feeling today? I've been up a long while because I'm uncomfortable. So how am I feeling today? I'm still out of sorts. For some reason my blood sugars went all over the place and have been 4 times higher than they ought to be. When my blood sugar is up, it makes me feel very unwell, and physically it's not so good. Emotionally and spiritually, this is how I feel right now. Emotionally and spiritually, how am I feeling in the moment of now? Having written about fellowship and what it is to me, I feel better and more stable, and right with a desire to keep on being sober one day at a time. Hooray! Having to stop and be still is all I could do in the last 24 hours. Type 1 diabetes, measuring blood sugars, and then injecting insulin of different types to find the balance. I have to smile here, because I did when I was writing it. I'm sure it's nothing like injecting illicit drugs, and I have to do insulin injections a number of times a day, depending on how I eat. So the number of injections depends how I eat. And my general health, if I fall ill with colds or flu, the calculation for insulin is extraordinarily difficult. And in the olden days, I suppose, if this system were available, you'd have to have a slide rule, and you have to have a calculator to do some of these things. So what I do, I can't. You never know from 1 hour to the next with a bug, cold bug or a flu bug, just how it's going to impact, because your liver's got glucose hidden in it as a reserve. So when you do go unconscious because your blood sugar goes far too low, there's a little bit of a pump through if you've taken the right insulin, of course. But if I hadn't taken the right insulin, there's nothing there to stop my death. Sounds a bit dramatic, but I do live on my own, and it is called the silent killer. So, having to stop and be still is all I could do in most of the last 24 hours. I smile here. I'm sure it's nothing like injecting illicit drugs, and I have to do insulin injections a number of times a day, depending on how I do things. So I have to do more checks and injections as the hours pass. And there are the complications as well, too many to mention right now, because I'm going on a bit. I have gone on a bit. So, too many to mention. For me, what helps most in all these complicated procedures is the simplicity of the 12 steps as principles of living which make anything possible today. It was 5 years into recovery, and then I developed type 1 diabetes. And because of fellowship, which is about love, learning the emotional and spiritual journey of now, my daily meditations, together with my daily medications, kept me on track one day at a time. And in the early days, somebody said, I remember it because it was prophetic in my case. Somebody said when they were reading out step 11, sought through prayer and medication instead of sought through prayer and meditation. And I laughed at that, because I do both out of necessity, one day at a time. To get a conscious concept of God, truth, love and wisdom, whatever it is, whatever floats your boat, whatever is right for you, whatever is profound and means the difference. It's not what floats your boat, that's superficial. It's what is profoundly you, what counts for you. So higher power, truth, love and wisdom, not mine, yours, that's what I need to listen to. And sometimes I'll take it on board, and sometimes I won't. But then, we'll start shouting at each other a bit, and hopefully get to a point of agree to disagree, because ultimately it's about sobriety and sanctuary to keep on finding the truth. That's how I see it. Others will see it differently. You will see it differently, hopefully, as you see fit. And today I have gratitude and can reflect that I'm alive much longer than I ever thought I would be. And each day is filled with promise. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. And I don't have to set myself up for failure on any given day. It's progress, not perfect. I'm simply living in the moment and having plans as the weather changes. I've just charged up my batteries from the cameras. And hopefully the onset of spring will improve as I start my wanderings and photography as circumstances permit, which is my mobility issues, which are difficult. And the Serenity Prayer embodies the can do and cannot do, and the wisdom to know the difference in the moment, minute, hour, and just for today. And that Serenity Prayer is for me. On the blog is last year's as well, and years before actually, but that's today. So, if you do wake up in the middle of the night thinking, I feel like crap, probably you don't have to check your blood sugars like I do, but mine were 24 when I checked them, which should be 6.5. So 24 is heart attack and stroke country if it continues like that. And I'm an older geezer, so I have to be careful. And I know my cholesterol's high, so I could go on ad infinitum. So I have to be careful. My blood pressure is alright, so I'm allowed Viagra, but I've got no one to play with. But that's just life, isn't it? That's how life is. Anyway, I'm not complaining. I've just got plenty of stock. And why am I saying that? Well, because it's true. I remember when I had my first relationship in recovery, and I had the diabetes already, my virility, or my erectile dysfunction occurred. And I was mortified, because I was a beautiful woman, and no reaction. And I thought, oh my God, beautiful woman, no clothes on, no reaction. So I went to the psychiatrist, actually, because it happened at the time. And he said, oh, don't worry about that, we've got a whole department for that sort of thing, and you're not the only one. It happens to a lot of geezers, that their whatnot doesn't work. And the good news is, it will work if you have the right understanding and can be amused by your dysfunctionality and get over it. I think that's why I'm mentioning it more than anything else. I don't care. I remember there was a meeting of 150 people, and I'd just been dumped by the beautiful woman who realised that I was not quite as good as I ought to be. And I mentioned it, and I said, it's all to do with the whatnot not working. Actually, it wasn't. It was my attitude and behaviour which put her off, because I was dismayed to the point of looking inward rather than asking for help, and the help was there, but I didn't ask. Anyway, we did get back together for a while, and things did work out eventually, but then we decided we were not compatible. That's life. That's life. Anyway, onwards and not so upwards. The serenity prayer to can do, can't do. These are the things we've got to laugh at in recovery, that we are human beings and we get things that go right and go wrong. It's not so much that they go wrong, maybe they're just tired out. And, you know, the time is different these days. I'm smiling. I think it's funny. And if we can't laugh at ourselves, what are we going to do? So, the serenity prayer, which enables laughter and serenity and joy, conviviality, hateful feelings and all the rest of it, we work it out eventually. The can do, can't do, wisdom to know the difference. To God, or as you understand, your higher power, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, with a little bit of help from the medical department, and the wisdom to know the difference, just for today. Fellowship has opened me up, and I don't mind being open and honest, because if I'm not open and honest, how on earth will you accept me, understand me, or even reject me? One day at a time.